Hi there. Try that again. Hi there. I am here again with another, I think, 10 books this week from the library, picture books, and I'm going to tell you what I thought of them. Um, Hopefully I'll be up to this. I'm a little bit groggy today. I didn't get enough sleep last night, and it's kind of earlier in the morning than... Well, whatever. I'll move on to these books, which I have, of course, as usual, going to review from my least favorite one to going up to my most favorite one. This one is called It's My Sausage. It's My Sausage by Alex Wilmore. This is my least favorite of the week, but it's a neutral review. I don't really particularly dislike or particularly like any of the books this week. The reason this one gets lowest on my list is just because it's, it doesn't really have much of a story. It just more feels like almost a light transcript of like a chaotic children's game of pretend, maybe, or something, is kind of how it feels. I mean, that's not what it literally is supposed to be, but it's about these 5 cats, I guess. Yeah, there are 5 of us, but just one sausage. And they're just fighting over a sausage. And it's mostly their dialogue, so there's not a lot of descriptive text. They're just all saying, like, yum, and it's my sausage, no, I want it, don't even think about taking my sausage. And the problem that I have with this book, if I have a problem with this book, is that it just is a little bit repetitive. It's just step away from my sausage over and over and over again. I think it has that feeling of like the author kind of like brainstorming all the like fun ideas that they could come up with for how this cat protects their sausage, but it's just not that fun. Either the premise or the ideas or the presentation or something didn't catch me very much. So the result is it just kind of feels repetitive, where this cat is like page after page just doing the same thing, just defending his sausage in another way. But maybe there's some kids that would find that funny. I was never like a fan of those like Roadrunner cartoons, and that's kind of the vibe of this to me, is sort of like a sort of less dramatic version of a Roadrunner cartoon. It's clearly meant to be a funny book, but it just didn't have a lot of humor to me. It repeated itself too much. So that's all I got to say about that, I guess. Maggie's Chopsticks, written by Alan Wu, illustrated by Isabel Malenfant. So this book is, and once again, pretty neutral review, just fine. I don't mind it that much. It just kind of... This one's another one that's really hard for me to put my finger on, like, why it was a little bit off to me. I think, once again, I think feels fairly repetitive to me. There's some interesting phrasing here, which, like here, I don't know, I'll just read it. Grandmother tells me I hold my chopsticks the wrong way. Do it like me, she grunts. Grunts is an interesting word to use here. And then it describes her, eating her food, and it almost feels graphic to me. She scrabbles for food from the center of the table, shoveling rice from bowl to mouth. Like, her grandmother sounds like some sort of animal, the way that she's describing it. Anyways, it's about a girl who doesn't know how to use chopsticks yet in a Chinese, possibly Chinese-American family, I'm not sure. And all of the members of her family know how to do it. And I think that's where the initial somewhat repetitiveness comes from, is that each family member tells her that's not how you use chopsticks, and then shows how they use chopsticks, I guess. There's not much of events don't happen. The story doesn't really happen. It's really just this it feels like the entire story takes place over like a matter of seconds, and that ended up feeling a bit more dragged out than I maybe would have personally been interested in. When there's a book about a kid who doesn't know how to do something yet, and then by the end they kind of learn how to do it, I kind of am interested in page by page feeling like I'm making progress on that journey to some extent. I feel like I can't do it, and then trying, and then getting a little bit better maybe after that. And this was just, it's like a whole bunch of feeling bad about it, and then a whole bunch, like page after page of like trying and not being able to do it, which these pages also feel very repetitive, because they're all like just, I tried to learn how to use chopsticks in a slightly different way. And it just goes on a few too many pages. I tried to learn how to use chopsticks. 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 And it's just kind of like, what's going on? And then only at the very end do we have what feels like progression to me, where the father has like a somewhat generic-ish message about like everyone's different, everyone's unique. You have your own way to use chopsticks. You don't have to do it like everybody else, which at least fits with the theme of the rest of the family. Each having their way that is demonstrated, so points for that. So it's not bad, but it just, I don't know. There's like these sags in the writing to me where it starts to feel like it's looping, and like stuck on itself a little bit. All right, Mel and Mo's Marvelous Balancing Act, written by Nicola Winstanley, interesting name, illustrated by Marianne Ferrer. I think my favorite thing about this book is probably the illustrations. I just kind of like the flat and sort of limited color palette, kind of paint style that's going on here. Some charming character design in these two twin sisters. And this story is about two twin sisters who grow apart because they like opposite things. And it's one of those stories that feels a little bit meandering to me, which isn't always bad. I think maybe the plus side of a meandering story in a children's book is that I think when children tell stories themselves, it tends to be kind of meandering, very and then, and like figuring out where you're going as you go. And so it can feel like authentically childlike in a fun way. Sometimes when books do that, but other times it just kind of feels like you're just kind of being dangled a little bit as a reader. I feel like, you just kind of like, you kind of want to have a sense of like where this might be going, both so that you can anticipate it and be excited for it, and also so that there's the potential to be surprised when it doesn't go the way that you're anticipating. And this book just doesn't really do that. It just kind of goes back and forth for a little while with them talking about how they are opposite. And then it's got this somewhat surreal storyline where the one girl takes over the umbrella store and the other girl starts like the family umbrella business. And the other girl goes to the circus to be a performer. And then for many years this works out. And then one day Theodora Tweedle's spectacular raincoats and roller skates came to town. After that, rainy day roller skating and spectacular raincoats became all the rage. No one wanted Mel's umbrellas anymore. No one cared much to watch Mo's unicycle with Poodle's. It was old hat. And so, I don't know, very surreal little development there. And they like are failing in their businesses because one roller skating raincoat business took over. And then they both need something, and they find, this is just what I need, when they find each other, which leads to them revitalizing themselves by being... I'm so confused. After that, Mel made the world's best super-duper handmade umbrellas for all the performers in Mo and Theodora's, the rivals, brand new roller skate umbrella circus. So it's just kind of like, where is this going a little bit? And then it goes somewhere that's just, I don't know, a little bit surreal and a little bit like there's not a lot of weight to this story. I felt like very and then, and didn't really feel like it's settled. It's like a surreal world, which kind of makes you feel like it's a bit of a fantasy world, but I didn't get a sense of that world feeling real at all. It just felt like it was surreal because it was an idea of a world and the details weren't filled in. You know what I mean? Whereas I would prefer a world that felt surreal because of the details that were filled in, All right, this one is called Chester's Masterpiece. It says, with no help from Melanie Watt, who is the author here. This one is, I don't know. I always like this concept because it makes me a bit nostalgic for childhood, but also I think I just kind of preferred the books from my childhood. But it's one of these things where a character in the book has written all over the book. That kind of book. And they've, in this case, it's this cartoon cat, who has taken over the book from the author. And so this, the funnest part to me is that it starts out like on the opening page, is like the publisher's page. Dear readers, I am thrilled to announce that Melanie Watt will no longer be writing or illustrating children's books because of a toothache and some technical difficulties. And then it's like the cat's drawn a missing tooth on the author and written, Chester, I'm so relieved that you're replacing me. You're way more talented. And then the author communicates with the cat through these sticky notes throughout the book. So it's very chaotic, and here's the publisher's page, and it has little details like, Kids Can Press is a chorus entertainment company that should change its name to Kids Cat Press. And what else? Edited without Tara Walker, designed by Chester. This book is sewn, case-bound, and stapled and taped together by Chester. Like all of these plays on the publishing. There really isn't much of a story. It's just this is again another book that kind of feels like a play session. This one is a bit more effectively fun though because it genuinely feels like the author like playing with her own character and having fun, and you can feel the author having fun, which I think gives this a little bit more strength than other books that just kind of dink around like this one kind of does. So the cat like tries to tell a bunch of different stories, but all of them are terrible because it's a cat. And the author kind of like mocks the cat during their creative process. Here's this point where Chester draws a setting, and it's the jungle, and then and then the author says, "Fine, Chester, I was only trying to help. I can draw just as well with this pencil." And then she draws this like dramatically better jungle, and the cat's like show off. I don't know. So there's like just a few fun moments throughout this where they interact with each other, and I enjoy a little bit of seeing like how the like what are the limitations in this little universe of like how the author can interact with the page and how she can't. For example, later in the book, she kind of like captures the cat by drawing a pencil mime outfit on top of it, stuff like that. So there's some fun elements in there. Overall, though, I feel like if I thought about it, there's a lot of books that kind of have this premise that would be more fun. And off the top of my head, like Simon's book is the only one that I'm thinking of, and I brought that book up like 3 times already on this channel, I think. But you know what else this book reminds me of? And I don't remember the title, so I'm actually just going to put it right here. But there are these books that I read as a child that were like the diary of a character, and they were just heavily annotated and illustrated and humorous in a way that feels like reminds me of kind of like a better version of this, not of this story, but of the attitude of this story, of the sort of like playful, like drawn, like hand drawing or hand lettering done all over, like off kilter all over the pages, kind of a vibe. So I recommend that book for that kind of fun thing. Okay, this book is called Tad. Sometimes the biggest stories have the smallest beginnings. I don't know if that's supposed to be a subtitle, but it's right there next to the title. It's by Benji Davies. I got this because of the cover. I think that the cover is really beautiful. I was hoping the art was going to be really gorgeous, and it's fine, but honestly, I don't think it doesn't really get any more pretty than the cover at any point. The text takes up a lot of the pages. It's like spread thin over the pages, which doesn't leave a lot of room for these kind of big scenes like this. It's more often these kind of splashes of color in between the text, with very few exceptions, actually. It's mostly that. There's some scenes, and the color is pretty nice, and the character designs are definitely charming, but I was a little sad that it wasn't as pretty as the cover. The story itself, I feel like I've read it before. I feel like I don't know. You know what? Like, as an author myself, I am genuinely tempted to write stories about tadpoles turning into frogs. It's kind of a fascinating subject. It's kind of a fascinating thing that happens in life, and like I just love thinking about tadpoles turning into frogs. And tadpoles and frogs are both so cute. It's kind of an inherently appealing thing to write about. But I do notice a lot of stories about tadpoles turning into frogs, and I feel like they tend to be really similar to each other because they tend to just, like literally, I've reviewed, I think, another book on this channel. Wasn't it called like 99 Tadpoles? I'm going to put those up there. Maybe I read that before I started this channel. I can't remember anymore. But I think it's the same story as this, where there's like a group of tadpole babies, and then one of them is like way smaller than the others, and all the other tadpoles grow up, and then the small tadpole feels like she's still small. Like, why is she still small? And then there's some sort of danger or something, and she, I think in the previous book she like that I read, she like saves the small tadpole saves the day for the other tadpoles. In this one, she doesn't even do that. She just like, is in danger, and then at the last moment escapes with her life. But she does so by, finally turning into a frog when she was still like, like a late bloomer, blooming because of the danger that's there, and then she's a frog in the end. That's the same story I've read a few times by different authors, and so I guess it's just a thing to keep in mind for myself or for you if you're thinking about writing a book about tadpole turning into a frog. Don't use the late bloomer narrative. I think it's been done too many times already, and frankly, like, yeah, I don't know, like just focusing on just the transformation from the tadpole to the frog. Like once there was a tadpole, they were so tiny. Then they turned into a frog. The end, kind of a vibe. Like just do something else. Like tell it like almost like I feel like I should think of a story that has nothing to do with frogs or tadpoles, and then just use frogs and tadpoles as the characters. It doesn't, or at least if you're going to make a story focusing on the transformation, try and think of something a little beyond this, because I don't know, that's very, it just is getting a little repetitive. So that's why I'm not a huge fan of that book per se. This one was interesting to me. It's called Gum by Nancy Willard, illustrated by Jeff Newman. It has a very clearly vintage style to the illustrations. It's clear from the cover, but it's just even more clear in certain other drawings. I mean, very, kind of family circus vibes a little bit. Or, I think there's another illustrator that I'm trying to think of. But everything from the art style to, just their style, like the kids' fashion and haircuts is a very old-fashioned. It's written in 2017, which is why this is notable. So that's interesting to me. It's like it's a 2017 book that's just completely trying to feel like it was from the 50s. I feel like, which is intriguing. But you know what? I feel like it gets it effectively does communicate that aesthetic without feeling like it's, sometimes when modern books emulate an old-fashioned style, it can feel almost like just, I don't know, maybe derivative. This one feels a little bit more authentic, just like that's how they happen to draw, perhaps, and not like super focused on the kitschiness of it, I guess, is what I mean. It's just a story about a kid who's got a lucky Canadian quarter in his allowance and he doesn't want to use it, but, the gumball machine is, they've used all their quarters on it and they still haven't gotten the shiny silver race card that they want, so he accidentally uses it. And I love this shot of the coin, and it's a shot from inside the gumball machine as the kid loses their coin into it, and then that ends up making the gumball machine break and everything comes out and they get the racer as a reward, the race car. So like you can tell from what I've told, the story is a little bit flat. It doesn't have a lot of emotional heft to it, but it's fine. It keeps along on a little bit of a clip, and it has a little bit of anticipation because it has a little bit of that, like it presents this silver race car that they really want, and a few attempts at trying to get it, and then failure, and then in the end, like through sudden circumstances, they end up getting it after all. So there's a little bit of like something to hold on to as like a goal to relate to, or a goal of the protagonist in the story that I guess gives it a little bit of interest. But I don't know. Just not super exciting to me. Alright, this is probably the last of my neutral reviews, definitely the most positive of my neutral reviews. The main thing that pushes this over the edge is the art for me. Little Green Donkey by, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, it's either Anushka Alipuz or I want to say Anushka. Anushka Alipuz? Hopefully I'm pronouncing that not too wrong. It's about a little green donkey who loves to eat grass, and I just think the art style is really charming. The both the like quality of the lines and color, and also the character design. The mom tries to make it eat other foods, but it doesn't want to eat other foods, and slowly you see it start to get green spots as it eats more and more grass. And there's quite a bit of dialogue here that I feel like is a bit unnecessary. Of the donkey goes on and on and on saying like, I like grass, I like grass, I like grass, I like grass, and it kind of feels like the author's trying to fill up space a little bit when all that they have to say is I like grass. There's even like a song on this page about it, but I don't really mind that much because it means more pictures, and I think the pictures are really charming. So yeah, this book has a little bit of like an attempted humor voice, sort of like, I mean, it's like the premise is, I think, funny enough that it could have maybe stood on its own, but the voice of the author seems to be very leaning into trying to be funny, which is a little bit distracting to me. But that might be really nitpicky to me. For some of you, it might just be funny, Anyways, you get to see this donkey like trying to hide himself so his mom doesn't see that he's eaten too much grass and turned green. And he's like, yes, nobody will ever guess I'm a genius. But his mom sees right away, little donkey, you're all green. You've finally eaten too much grass. He tries all of these other foods and doesn't like them much, but then he likes carrots and eats so much of them that he turns orange, which another really particularly lovely, I think, charming color choices here. But this page kind of sums up the humor of this book. Just like, I'm gonna go and get some water. Great. It's hard to. I'm hoping because it's hard for me to put this into words, especially when I'm this groggy. But like, there's just this kind of. It kind of reminds me of like children's movie like trailers when it's like action, 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 and then the character just being like, great. I don't know. It's like humor through attitude as opposed to humor through surprise or circumstance, I guess, and that's not as entertaining to me. All right, this one's called Fish for Jimmy, inspired by one family's experience in a Japanese-American internment camp by Katie Yamasaki. This is the start of my positive reviews this week. The art style is all right. I'm not too fussed about it one way or another. It starts out with a family who is, a boy who's being raised in America by parents who are from Japan, and like it just kind of has a nice little setting of their life and how happy their life is, and how I think this is an important page. It talks about the parents like worrying when they hear about the bombing of Pearl Harbor, but it focuses on the kids' perspective of like, I don't see why that would be a big deal. It's so far away from us and we didn't do anything, right? And that's kind of an important theme throughout this book that I think is what gives it its emotional weight, is like just the perspective of like focusing on the perspective of the child who was raised in America and is like, why, what does this have to do with like anything from my world? Like, this just doesn't fit at all with my world. It's like we're just like ordinary people who run the grocery store, like what is happening. And that's really sad, and it's also really relatable. And so that's, I think, emotionally powerful. And this is my favorite part, even though it's the worst part, is that the kid, the youngest kid in the family, starts to refuse food pretty much immediately upon arriving at the camp. And I'll just read you some of this because I think it drives home what I was saying just earlier a little bit better than I was able to. Jimmy didn't understand why his family couldn't be together at home near the Pacific Ocean, at home where they could eat in their own kitchen. Why couldn't his mother cook the good rice and noodles, fresh vegetables, and fish that he was used to? Soon Jimmy stopped asking about the Pacific fish and could no longer remember how the ocean looked and smelled. He stopped running with the other children. Mother and Taro feared that Jimmy was becoming ill. That really captures something to me of just, I feel like there's a certain age where you can even tell a child why, and they still won't understand why, because it doesn't make sense. It only makes sense if you use, like, terrible, twisted adult logic that, like, accounts for all these surreal, horrible parts of adult life that aren't a part of a child's life. And so to the child, it's just like, why can't we go home and have the food that I like? I don't get it. I'm not describing it very well, but to me that's really powerful. Like, I remember even in my life as a child having that, where it's like when things weren't normal, I would just be like, well, let's just go back to normal then, Like, it should be as simple as that from a child's perspective, I think. And connecting this, like, horrific historical event to that, like, feeling that I think most of us remember from childhood of just, like, not getting why things can't just be the way we expect them to be. Like, that's the fact that I expect them to be that way should be enough to make them that way, right? Is kind of the feeling I feel like for a lot of really young kids. And connecting that not only to this horrific historical event, but also then, like, using that as the reasoning for why this kid is, like, starving himself, especially with these pictures of him sort of, like, falling asleep from lack of energy is the vibe that I get. Or, like, obviously there's, like, this is this person mourning and like, sitting there in sadness, but I feel like I can also sense the hunger and weakness as they kind of collapse upon themselves, and, like, you can see that face again here. And yeah, so connecting those like childhood emotions to, like, the imagery of a child starving themselves, you are both horrified by the child starving themselves, but you also like understand it. It really primes you to understand, like, oh yeah, I think I would do that almost, which is powerful. Anyways, the kid's older brother ends up sneaking out and cutting through the fence. And there's some really nice writing in here, nice phrasing, and there's a very creepy atmospheric scene where the kid goes to a river in the middle of the night. I don't know about you, but like bodies of water in the night is like a really powerful, weird thing to me, and it made for good imagery. And he catches fish for the kid to eat. And it explains in the back. It kind of ends with a happy ending, where the kid gets to eat the fish that the brother caught, and their father kind of comes back after having been separated from them. And it's I say happy ending, but I mean upbeat. It's not really happy because they're still in an internment camp. But it doesn't. It ends on a hopeful note. That's the word I should be using. Anyways, then it explains in an author's note in the back that the events in this book are all actually taken from people in the person who wrote this book, Katie Yamasaki's family history. Not verbatim this story, but like taking pieces from other people's stories and putting them together into one family is what that person did for that. All right. Okay. So, this book is called Nasla's Dream by Cecile. Ooh, I'm not very great with French names. Rumiguier? I'm not even going to try. I'm sorry. You can read that name for yourself. Cecile Romiguier, and illustrated by Simone Rea. Art's definitely the highlight of this book. There's some very cool, creepy character design going on. Check that out. I don't know. I find how small her eyes are and her big head and her small body and big hair. It's all very I love the proportions. It's very appealing to me. Some great spooky imagery in this book. These moons are a little bit creepy, I feel like. And man, look at how great this page is. Look at that charming long-armed ghost that she's afraid of, and then they don't even address what this is. So this story, I don't know. In a self-deprecating way, I think my main complaint with the story would be that it kind of reminds me of my own writing in a way that makes me self-conscious about my own writing. It does seem to sound like an attempt to be very atmospheric and somber, which is something that I tend to do a lot, and there's something a little bit disconnected to me about that. Like, I don't feel the engagement of the author in the writing, which is a really abstract thing to say, I realize, but that's not what I think is actually going on so much as just the sense that I get, and that's the best way I can explain the emotional feeling of this book, is like somewhat of a disconnect, I don't know, I don't hear the author's voice very strongly. I feel what the author wants to sound like, but maybe that's all in my head, and it might really just be coming from the fact that I'm comparing it to the fact that this sounds like my writing when I'm doing that to me. So, anyways, the story itself, I think, is really cool because it's another story that kind of offers a perspective from childhood that I think we can all relate to, but that many of us may have forgotten about. Nasla is not asleep. Lying in her bed, she sees a yellow dot above the wardrobe, a little eye like an opening in the dark night. Nasla wonders who is looking at her. Is it her toy turtle? And this is how this starts, and it continues to go on like this. It's a story about when you are a child and you're sitting in the dark and you can't see the world around you. That world really does kind of seem to feel like it melts away to a large extent and is replaced by sort of the night dimension version of your world, you know what I mean? Where everything's shape is nebulous and things might be, there are things that are in the dark that aren't there when the lights are on, and the things that are there when the lights are on seem to be there only in a sort of nebulous memory form. You can see that the bookshelf will be there when you turn the light on, but right now it's something a little bit more than just the bookshelf. It's nebulous. I remember that feeling really strongly of the dark being a different place than the light version of the same room, and of the things warping and morphing and feeling the reality of that surreality. And this book does a really good job at focusing on that, even if the wording itself is a little bit awkward, in my opinion. She wonders what that is, and she thinks about like all of the like her. It's just kind of the narrative of her mind wandering over these weird thoughts that the things that she sees in the dark make her think, slash thinking about like what are those things in the dark. Nasla stares at the wardrobe and sees a shadow. When her father put her turtle up there, he also placed Timbobo the elephant and all of Nasla's toys in a neat pile. The shadow moves. Timbobo is swinging his trunk, and there's that creepy elephant. Something's moving in the dark. There's a little glowing light in the dark. And another thing that they mentioned throughout the story is this sort of, she wants to get up. She wants to play. She wants to do this and that and that. And then the narrative repeatedly says that she can't do that because you're supposed to sleep at nighttime. And that, I don't know, maybe this is just personal, but I remember that being specifically connected to that nebulous world of, like, the dark, where when I was a kid, of, like oh, wow, it's, like, weird and creepy out there, and the being awake in this nebulous dark world doesn't feel like the right thing to do. I want to get up, but then, like, I would feel this, like, weird dread of, like, but you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to be sleeping. And it almost be like scolding myself in my parents' voice sometimes. We had lullaby music that we would play, and we weren't supposed to get up until the lullaby music was over. And sometimes I would have to pee or something while the lullaby music was still playing. And I remember this, like, terrible feeling of, like, what do I do? What do I do? I can't get up when the lullaby music is still playing. You know what I mean? And I feel like this captures that, at least it reminds me of that from my life. I don't know if that's that universal or what, but it has this sort of, like, admonishing quality of, like, you're not supposed to play, you're not supposed to do this, you're just supposed to sleep. But that sentiment isn't helping her go to sleep. It's helping her stay, like, locked in this slightly fearful, nebulous darkness dimension kind of vibe of the night, where everything's mutable and everything's different from the day. And this is the page where she really goes into the fantasies about that. And this too. Now Nasla hears a sound, something breathing in the dark. It is not her turtle. It is not Timbobo. But what then? And I think the illustration really captures this too. Like, they're the everything's kind of warping. I don't know. So maybe it's just capturing something personal, but I feel like it's saying something that's pretty universally relatable, and with just the most incredible characters. Look at her dream world is so Hieronymus Bosch inspired and awesome. I love these characters. So I hope I've described what I like about that well enough. Anyways, by the end, it turns out that the movement and light in the dark was just her cat, which I think is a good connection back to the real world for maybe children reading that book. But it's a good, I like spooky kids books, and that it captures that spookiness well, and it reminds me of a real feeling from childhood that I feel like doesn't get focused on a lot, outside of the minds of children. So that was cool. All right, this one's called 4 Feet, 2 Sandals. This is my last book for the day. This is my favorite one this week. It's written by Karen Lynn Williams and Kadra Muhammad, and illustrated by Doug Chaika? Not really sure how to pronounce that last name of the illustrator. The illustrations are so lovely in this. They have this very, I think it's like oil paints or something, but it's got this very thick, waxy quality where, how do I explain this? I don't know. I can feel the sun, like, bending around the characters and softening their figures, I guess. Let's see if I can find a really good... This one's probably my favorite illustration. I don't know. Do you see what I mean there? There's this kind of soft waxiness to this that has, like, a real dimension and such nice, strong shadows and bright colors that really make you feel the sunlight. But at the same time, it feels like, I don't know, flat and tactile in a really cool way. Did I show that properly, or was it cut off? The story is about, I think it's a young girl in, Pakistan, who comes from Afghanistan, and it's a refugee camp, so she's on the on the run from a war where she was living before, and or not on the run, but like staying at a refugee camp after having been on the run. She meets another girl there, and both of these girls kind of have lost family members to that war. And the reason that they meet is that sort of the relief workers are coming and bringing clothes to the refugee camp, and both of these girls find one sandal from a pair. And then they decide in this page to share that sandal, to swap who uses the sandals day by day. So they each have the full pair every other day. And then the book kind of progresses in seeing, showing like genuine like little scenes of like refugee camp life in the pictures, but not focusing too much on those in the text. It doesn't focus too much on refugee camp life in the text. It does a little bit, but not as much as the pictures. The pictures kind of carry the weight of depicting the setting. The text is very focused on the friendship between these two girls, which is, given how little text is spent in this book, it's not that long of a book, the friendship between these two girls is remarkably genuine. And that's the real strength of this book. I got quite emotional reading this book because of the beauty of the friendship between these two girls. They're just really supportive and sweet and towards each other. And you can kind of get the sense of them feeling like they both felt quite alone and isolated, and like there wasn't anybody else like them until they met each other. And all of this is communicated really subtly. You just kind of get it, even though it doesn't like say it outright, which is just great writing. And yeah, I feel so happy for them to have found each other, which makes it all the more emotional when one of the girls ends up going to America. So she's her name's on a list, her family's name is on this list, and they are chosen to go to America, I guess, and they have to separate, and they have this little heartfelt hug. The girl who's going to America gets new shoes from her family, and so she gives the sandals to the other girl to keep, and that kind of made me feel emotional. But then they turn around, and the girl who's staying behind runs over and ends up actually asking the girl who's going to America to keep one of those shoes. And the girl's like, "What good is one shoe?" And the person's like, "It's good to remember me by." And I was tearing up. It was beautiful. So really great drawings and really great depiction of friendship between two girls. Like one of the best friendship books I've ever read. Just such a genuine feeling. Cute friendship. I really highly recommend reading that for an example of just effortlessly subtle writing that makes you feel all the things that you need to feel without spending too much time on it, too much time saying it or explaining itself. It just somehow transmits the data to you. You get the emotional weight just through the simple, relatable examples of dialogue between two people. You can feel how they feel for each other through the dialogue. It's so well done with so few words. I was really impressed. Okay, so that's all I've got this week, and I will catch you guys later with my next batch of books. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you're well. See you later. Bye.